blue hymnal will be number 9 in the blue hymnal. God can do anything but fail. Number 9. Blue hymnal number 9. God can do anything, anything, anything. God can do anything but fail. He can save, He can heal, He can cleanse, and He will. God can do anything but fail. He's the Alpha and Omega, beginning and the end. He's the fairest of 2,000 to my soul. Can do anything, anything, anything. God can do anything but fail. And you may be seated. And Mr. Chuck had a note this morning, but they're on vacation. I think today's their 56th or 57th anniversary, because I'm filling in on the devotion for him. But anyway, I was reading Proverbs chapter 13 Friday, and a couple of verses stuck out. Proverbs chapter 13, in verse 12, it says, "Hope deferred maketh the heart sick, but when the desire cometh, it is a tree of life." It's that word desire there, and then later on in the chapter, verse 19, it says, "The desire accomplished is sweet to the soul." And then so two words right there, desire, and those two verses stuck out. And so that made me think of Psalms 37:4 too, where it says, "Delight thyself also in the Lord, and He shall give thee the desires of thine heart." So the first thing I thought about was the desires of our heart and waiting and God bringing them to pass. Of course, in verse 4, chapter 37 Psalms, it says, we should delight in the Lord to make sure that our desires are right and according to His will. Our delight needs to be in the Lord. And then I thought about for our desires, that we need to bring our desires to God and pray about our desires and just make sure they're in accordance with our will. But then in verse 12 of 13 in Proverbs, it says, "Hope deferred maketh the heart sick." So that just made me think sometimes you might have some desire and expectation for it, and there's just going to be a time of waiting until that comes to pass. And in that time of waiting, it's going to maybe a season of depression or a season of discouragement while this hope is deferred. It kind of made me think about this whole thing about adoption today and foster care and stuff. You're talking about children, or maybe wanting to have children, or maybe be in the foster care system. There can be a lot of hope deferred. I know my sister was a foster and a child for a little, and they eventually did adopt them, but I know it was kind of a roller coaster up and down. But then in the end, when the desire cometh is a tree of life, and I guess with the Rosses too, there's a lot of desire there, a godly desire, and finally it came to pass with the tree of life. So sometimes with your desires, you may have to wait, patiently wait for the good desire to come to pass. And now notice in verse 12 it says, "When the desire cometh," and then in verse 19 it says, "The desire accomplished." So I notice cometh and accomplished. Some desires you may have to wait for the desire to come to pass, especially if you're talking about children or foster care or something like that. That's a lot of waiting for something to happen. But then in verse 19 it says, "The desire accomplished." There's some maybe desires that you have to put a little work into to accomplish them. I know some younger people in here, Nevaeh and Haley, probably driving for too long on their own, so they may desire a car. So for this desire to be accomplished, to have a car, they may have to put some work into it to have that desire come to pass. But and then the fifth thing I thought about was if you have a godly desire, whether you're working and waiting, you need to be patient and wait on God's time. And it says, when it comes to pass, it is sweet to the soul, and another verse said, it is a tree of life. So just make sure the desires of your heart are in accordance with God's will, and you may have to wait patiently for it to come to pass. But anyway, that's just what I had this morning.
That's good, John.
Good job.
All right.
Thank you. Young people.
I was kind of thinking maybe what Melissa needs to do is adopt 3 more like the ones you got. You done good the first time. You good. And then then I learned something else, Brother Bo, that I kind of like. I kind of picked up. Do we have a wreck over there?
Yeah.
Head-on collision.
Here's a good verse I like. Brother Bo, you appreciate this, and some of y'all, Miss Jean, maybe. Said, a good man leaveth an inheritance to his children's children. Leave your inheritance to your grandchildren. I kind of like that one. All right. Take your Bible, turn with me to, we're going to finish up the 6th chapter today. And let me tell you something else I want you to do too, if you would with me. Go ahead and read the 7th chapter. We're getting into a part. The first part is pretty easy. It's just really, we're just looking at the, what we call the practical side, the first 6 chapters, what we could do, put into practice. And kind of one of the things we look at the lesson today, one of the things it kind of tells us also, it is the fact that the Bible plainly teaches I'm to obey the law. And every ordinance of the law for a man's sake. But there comes a time that if the law directs you to do something against God's law, then you may have to take a stand. But you're still probably going to get in trouble, right? I mean, if you break man's law. And Daniel had to choose between breaking the law of the Medes and Persians. But I'm going to say this, Daniel was not a lawbreaker. Daniel was very careful about what he did in obeying. In fact, the Bible said, and I've been thinking about it all week, and I'm working on it, but I ain't got there yet. Daniel had an excellent spirit, John. We looked at that last week. And an excellent spirit, that gives you something. A man with an excellent spirit would be easy to deal with, right? And he did well. In fact, the Bible said the Darius preferred him before others because he had an excellent spirit. And finding a man and woman with an excellent spirit, that's really an achievement. And so he wasn't a troublemaker. He wasn't a lawbreaker. He didn't stand outside with a protest sign, although he could have protested against a lot of things. What he could do, he did. But then there came a time when Daniel, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, had to take a stance contrary. They either had to break the law of God. Well, let me ask you, if you had to break the law of God or the law of man, which would you do? Well, that's not an easy question. Because if you break the law of man, then you pay the consequences of breaking the law of man. So it has to be for something pretty significant. And so we want to look at that. A man with an excellent spirit put into a crisis situation. What am I going to do? And he would have really, had he not done what he done, he would have failed the Lord. Everybody knew what Daniel did. He opened his windows. Everybody knew Daniel prayed. So we will look at that this morning. But I tell you what, let's do, and I actually put that in my notes here, so let me see. All right, we're going to do a quick review. Has everybody got the sheet? Anybody need a sheet? Anybody got theirs? Oh, John, would you come and pass out to you and Sarah a sheet?
Does somebody need a sheet?
Have you got a sheet?
We had one from last Sunday.
Oh, you had last Sunday morning, didn't you?
Yeah, I don't think we have any extras.
Okay, nobody extra, all right. Yeah, I was thinking y'all was out Sunday, but you was here Sunday morning, wasn't you?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. Well, I want to read the rest of the chapter beginning in verse 10 through the rest of chapter 6. So if you would, look with me, verse number 10, chapter 6 of Daniel. The Bible said, now when Daniel knew the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God as he did aforetime. By the way, even in that I see an excellent spirit, because when he prayed, he gave thanks before God. Then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. And they came near and spake before the king concerning the king's decree. Hast thou not signed a decree that every man that asks a petition of any god or man within 30 days, say of thee, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? The king answered and said, the thing is true according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which altereth not, which cannot be altered. Then answered they and said before the king to Daniel, which is of the children of the captivity of Judah, regard for thee not, O king, nor the decree thou hast signed, but he's made his petition 3 times a day. Then the king, when he heard these words, was sore displeased. Now look at him, with himself, not with Daniel, with himself, and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him, and he labored to the going down of the sun to deliver him. These men assembled unto the king and said unto the king, Know, O king, that the law of the Medes and Persians is that no decree or statute which the king established may be changed. Then the king commanded, they brought Daniel and cast him to the den of lions. Now the king spake and said unto Daniel, Thy God whom thou servest, he will deliver thee. And a stone was brought and laid upon the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet, and the signet of his lord, that the purpose might not be changed concerning Daniel. Then the king went to his palace, passed the night fasting, neither were the instruments of music brought before him, and his sleep went from him. Then the king arose very early in the morning, and went in into the den of lions. And when he came to the den, he cried with a lamentable voice to Daniel. And the king spake and said to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, is thy God, whom thou servest Daniel, able to deliver thee from these lions? Then Daniel said unto the king, O king, live forever. My God has sent an angel, has shut the lions' mouth, that they have not hurt me, for as much as before him innocent was found in me, and also before thee, O God, have I done no hurt. And the king was exceedingly glad for him, and commanded that they should take Daniel out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no manner of hurt was found upon him, because he believed in his God. And the king commanded, they brought those men which accused Daniel, and they cast them into the den of lions, them and their children, their wives, and the lions had mastery over them, breaking all their bones in pieces, or ever they came to the bottom of the den. Then King Darius wrote unto all people, nations, languages that dwell in all the earth, Peace be multiplied unto you. I make a decree that every dominion of my kingdom men tremble and fear before the God of heaven, for he is the living God and steadfast forever. And the kingdom that which and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be even to the end. And he delivereth and rescueth, and he worketh signs and wonders in heaven and earth, who delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. So here we have the conclusion of the story of Daniel, but I thought I would flip through right quick this morning since I got the same. And we journeyed through chapter 6, and so if you have any questions as we go, you can stop me. But we've looked at the practical truths of the book, and we looked at the prophetic truths. Now, do read chapter number 7, or you will be lost. Do read chapter number 7 to see what took place. We get into Daniel's prophecy, and a lot of Daniel's prophecy is concerning dreams he had. Okay, we shift from dreams he interpreted of others to dreams he had, prophetic dreams. So you'll want to look at that beginning in chapter 7 next week. Then we, of course, the king of Babylon had fallen, but Daniel was brought captive, just a teenager. Now the Mede Persians now reigns, and Daniel's close to 90 years old. He'd been in captivity about all his life, Brother. And what's the funny thing about it? The man prospered. Well, you just can't. If a man will put God first, God will prosper him. You know. So we learn a valuable lesson, a practical lesson of standing for the Lord and having a good spirit. Now, somebody said, "Was Daniel a Baptist?" Well, we didn't have Baptists then, but that good spirit bothers me. I kid about that. We don't always have a good spirit. Have y'all ever met Baptists that did not have a good spirit? You probably have. But I love Baptist folks, don't y'all? I really do. Brother John, I've been all preaching meeting. I'd stand and preach the meeting, and when I stand up and preach the meeting, I look out and everybody look mad, Brother Bo. I mean, they all look mad. I just said, and I look. And I remember saying first time I went off, I said, well, I don't know if y'all gonna have a good time, but I'm gonna have a good time today. And I did have a good time. But we really ought to have a smile later. Certainly not proud. We looked at this. I think there's about 6 things in here: distinction of Daniel, deception of Daniel, decision of Daniel, disappointment of Darius, deliverance of Daniel, and destruction of others. I'll let you know when we get to the declaration of Darius. I'll let you know when we get to this beginning verse 11. Question 11. when we, on our papers. But distinction to Daniel, we found out that the government of the Medo-Persian government was totally different. In preceding, they had a king, and the king just ruled over everybody. But he actually had a cabinet. He had 3 presidents and 120 princes. So that's a different form of government, we just kind of noticed. And then we noticed the preference for Daniel. Daniel was preferred before all the other members because he had an excellent spirit. And would you say our politicians today have excellent spirits? I saw an article in Jones County paper, and it was talking about the first time in history they have fired the Speaker of the House. And he said, I didn't think we could get more dysfunctional than we were in our government, but I've realized now we can. Our government is totally dysfunctional. It seems like they have a real problem getting a handle and working together and getting some good bills passed. So, but Daniel had a good spirit about him, worked seemingly well, and even in his environment with other men. We saw a deception of Daniel, and they investigated Daniel. They were jealous of Daniel because he was thought to be put above everybody else. He was going to be in charge. And they got real jealous, so they saw occasion, could not find anything. The only fault they knew to find was with the fact of his worship. So that's what they went after. The consultation of the cabinet, they came to the king and they told the king, all of us, all your presidents, and which Daniel was one, all your princes, which is probably true, may not have been true to that, have agreed that we need to enact a law. We want to honor you. We think we're worthy of honor. Brother Danny, it's kind of like past depreciation. But Brother Danny knows he's very smart. Really, he's very smart. And if you come up to Brother Danny and say, Brother Danny, you're just the most handsome man, you're the sweetest preacher we have. Time he said too many words, he gets the one, and I wonder what they got.
Or what you want now.
What do they want now? They fit to tell me something bad. Well, that's kind of Brother Danny had that in his key, but he fell for it. And they saw a decree, an unchangeable law, which for 30 days nobody make a petition. A petition is a request of anyone other than the king, and the penalty of the decree was to be cast into the lines. Now we're getting up into 10, looking at the decision of Daniel. And first thing we notice, verse 11, I call it the perception of Daniel, what Daniel knew. Now, did Daniel know the law was signed? Absolutely. The Bible says the perception of Daniel was that he knew the writing of the decree had been signed by King Darius. Daniel really, I say love, maybe it's wrong. Daniel seemed to really respect and care for whoever he's with. And you know, he was a genuine man, and he had a good relationship. Well, you can see from the king, he had a good relationship with him. With Darius had a good relationship with Daniel. He knew the writing was signed. He knew the king had signed it. But he also knew that that would be a violation of his conscience, spiritually. And so what Daniel did, okay, Daniel's facing, do I pray or do I not pray? Do I shut the windows and pray? Which would have been to hide the fact that he was praying. He had had a clear testimony. If he had done that, it would have been a bad reflection upon Daniel and upon his God. Well, hey, Daniel got them windows closed today. I bet he's in there praying, but he don't want to be seen praying. Sometimes you just, you know, if you're going to really have a good testimony, you got to maintain your course, and he did. So as he did aforetime, he knelt and prayed with the window of his chamber open toward Jerusalem, which is what they did 3 times a day. He'd been, now you got to think about it, how long had he been praying with his windows open toward Jerusalem, most likely, since he was a captive. Jews, and we're right down the war, Jews love Jerusalem. That's their spiritual city. And so he no doubt Miss Sheila had been praying and praying and praying concerning Jerusalem and the Jewish people. Then we see verses 11 through 18, we see the disappointment. Well, we see the practice of Daniel before time he knelt. Then we see the disappointment of Darius. And we find, first of all, an accusation against Daniel. They come to the king. come to the king, and they say, King, you know this Daniel that we serve with? And by the way, they brought up the fact, you know, this Jew from the captivity. Do you think there was any anti-Semitism in that? Yes. I think they resented that they were serving Medes and Persians with a Jew. I know if you go back to the book of Esther, then you've got, what was his name, preacher? The man's name? Esther was the queen.
Mordecai.
Mordecai. Didn't like that Jew. And then they would even have a decree to destroy the Jewish people. Now what's going on in Israel? Does Hamas want the land? Well, they would take it. But what is their real goal? Kill. They want to kill the Jews. So they don't mind, Miss Jean, killing a child. If it's a baby, they'll kill a baby Jew. No hesitation. Iran has made it very clear they want to exterminate, destroy all Jews. And by the way, just before you get too encouraged over that, they want to destroy all Americans as well.
Yeah.
If 9/11 was about killing Americans, do you think about, did they hit a military base? Kill civilians, and that bothers me. If Iran had attacked a military base, military to military, I mean, you won't like that, you shouldn't say it. But when you attack civilians, of course, we've had a lot of that going on with Russia, and we've had a lot. They came into that music festival. They shot down and killed civilians, and you just a thug and a murderer when you do that.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're a terrorist, but you're a thug. These shootings we have, when they walk into a school and shoot children.
Yeah, sick.
I think a shooting like that ought to be mandatory death sentence.
Yeah.
No, if they
Yeah,
find you
I
guilty.
think so too.
I think that's one of the only things that deters them. Of course, some of them kill themselves. I understand that too. But an accusation against Daniel, so they come in and tell the king, we saw it. By the way, it's kind of funny, Miss Guyton. First of all, a good testimony for these guys that saw it. They had to stay there. The man prayed in the mornings, so they had to be there in the morning to see him. They had to come back or stay to dinner time. Then they had to be back in the evening. These spies were busy watching Daniel pray. And I don't doubt they probably heard Daniel pray. Probably heard him. And if they did, they heard him thanking his God. God, I just want to thank you today for the many blessings you've been so good to me. What a testimony Daniel had before these men. That should have caused those men to get right. They certainly, did they have a gospel witness before them? Yes.
Yep.
They had a witness. And instead of taking the witness, what they did, they hardened their hearts and used the accusation against Daniel. Came in and told the king, now king, you signed the law of Medes and Persians. This man is making a petition before his God, and you said if a man did that, he'd be cast into the den of lions. So they come back with their accusation before King Darius against Daniel. And what was amazing to me, look at verse 14 with us. And the king, when he heard these words, was what? Sore displeased. That's question 14 with himself. What have I done? Miss Sheila. I like Miss Sheila, but no one, I knew Miss Sheila. She used to be young. She was 21 back then with Miss Sheila.
Yep.
And but Miss Sheila makes a lot of mistakes I make, I think, Miss Sheila.
We all do.
Have you ever said, oh, I messed up. I wish I hadn't done that. I think we all have. The king says, man, I have been deceived. They got me to sign that thing. I love Daniel. I was going to make him over the kingdom. And he's displeased. But it kind of amazes me, he didn't get mad with Daniel about praying. He could have said, well, that serves him right. Now, I like the man, but he was told not to pray, and he prayed. Didn't say that, Miss Sheila. He said, I'm just pleased. In fact, I think he appreciated Daniel's testimony. That's one of the things he appreciated about him. He wasn't surprised that when he found out that Daniel continued to serve his God. It didn't surprise him. He just was displeased with himself for letting them deceive him. Then we see verses 16 and 17, Daniel cast into the lion. Now the king did everything he wanted to do everything to preserve Daniel, but he could not do anything because of the laws of the Medes and Persians. He commanded because he had to, and they brought, by the way, we say Daniel in the lion's den, but what does the Bible generally, how does it say that? It says lion's den, what does it say? Den of lions. Den of lions. Because I always like to say lion's den, because that way you hear it as a child, but it's a den of lions, it's the same thing. And their form of execution was to take a man or woman, or children, I guess, in this case, to take them and cast them into the lion's den, and these lions are vicious, ferocious animals. And that's how, you were punished. And it's kind of funny how you look over capital punishment. To them, it was a lion's den. To the Jew during Jerusalem, during Jesus' time, it was stoning. And then to the Romans, what was the Romans' form of execution?
Dying on the cross. Dying on the cross.
Cross, yeah, crucifixion was Romans. Then we moved in our day, we used to have what? Used to have a firing squad, which has been popular in other countries. We had hanging, right? And then we had, I think, is the next one probably the electric chair?
Yeah.
The electric chair. And now I think we've got, what, the needle?
Yeah, lethal injection.
Like pretty much.
And the gas chamber.
And the gas chamber. You had the gas chamber. So we see this was that form of, if you violated this law, it was a capital offense. It was, then you was going to face the death penalty. So, but Daniel, but Darius displeased, but he gave the order, verse number 16. Then they brought a stone, put it over it, put a seal on it to make sure. Did Daniel slip out and just slip back in? No, this thing was sealed. And then the king went to his palace and passed the night fasting. Neither instruments of music brought for him and sleep with him. The king was very, very troubled. He didn't have a choice, so he cast Daniel in the lion's den. But then chapter reveals his discomfort. He just couldn't get any rest. He worried about them. Now, it's kind of funny what he said to Daniel. He said, Daniel, your God you serve will deliver you. Does that sound like y'all sometimes? I'm going to give it to the hands of God, then you worry about it. When he got Daniel out of the lion's den, was your God able to deliver you? I mean, this man, well, you know how that goes with your own faith. You know God can do things, but then do y'all ever pray about something and still worry about it? Or is it just me? Sometimes we know God can do things, and yet we'll allow ourselves to worry over some of these things. So it was with Daniel. He could not sleep all night long, and so he very uncomfortable that night. Then we notice the disappointment of Darius, and I like this. 19 and 20, he cries with a lamentable voice. He is just heartbroken. If I can say it that way. Heartbroken. I remember going to somewhere up toward North Atlanta, and I was helping years ago, right after I left here. I was helping the church a little bit while they didn't have a pastor. And a young man had got killed, and the young man was not a Christian. His parents were not Christians. And I remember going up into the parking lot, and this lamentable cry, you could hear the people wailing. Oh! That's what you heard. I just got in the car. That's a lamentable cry. I mean, that's a heartbroken, heart-wrenching cry. And he cries out with this lamentable voice, it is thy God, whom thy servants continually able to deliver thee. He was heartbroken. He was disgusted with himself and heartbroken. We hear his cry. And then we see he goes, of course, during that night, he didn't sleep any. I'm kind of mad at John right now. He sleeps good every night. I don't sleep at night. John, I'm aggravated with you. I'm thinking about calling him every time I wake up. I do it. But I'm scared Sarah went out to the phone. What do you want, brother? You don't want to stir up the wrath of a boat done. You might want to learn that too. So, no, I'm kidding. I'm glad. When you're young, you sleep good. Miss Jean, some of you others, you're a little older, Miss Betty, we don't sleep like we used to. But he tells the king, God sent an angel to shut the lion's mouth. And he says, my God delivered me. Now, I would imagine, because of what he said, he's cast in there, and immediately there comes in there with him. Remember when you go back to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, it was one like the Son of God in there, and they walked out unharmed. Remember that one? In the fire furnace? Now you got the den of lions. Now you got, as soon as he goes in there, everything. In fact, I would think when he got there, Miss Sheila, the angel was there and said, come on in, Daniel. I got these lions taken care of. Go ahead and get you a good night's sleep. What's really kind of funny is, I honestly, somebody said he curled up on a lion. I don't think so. I don't see Brother Bo laying on a lion, even if they did have an angel in that. I don't see Brother Bo doing it either. But though I think he got the farthest corner he could away from the lions. And I'm sure he really did have a good night's sleep because he had the presence of God. And then we see the command of Darius. And Darius commanded they take Daniel out of the den of lions. And this is something it says here. Then we go back to the fire furnace. No manner of hurt was found on him because he believed in his God. He didn't have a scratch. My wife has a cat. Well, really, it's not a cat. And he's an unusual cat. And we love him. I sat in my house, I heard this awfulest wailing. I thought cats were fighting. Meow! Wow! I thought, what? And the cat, I went out there, there's a little kitten that long that was under a rock. And I could hear it farther from him to the front door, sitting in my house. And so we took pity of this little cat, we brought it, and he's about that long now. He has a belly, when he walks it shakes. I kid you, I've never seen a cat like him. He said, ain't just a big belly, it's just kind of bad. And really, we love him. But sometimes when you pet him, he'll bite you on the hand. John, I was sitting there, let back the chair, and this cat weighs 15 pounds. He came running up, throwed his claws around my hand, and I had to pull my arm out of the joint. Just didn't stick his claws in. Just want some attention. So, cats and lions. Now, a cat can be a little menacing. And if a cat bites you, it can be kind of bad. I remember Miss Sandra picked up one of the kittens. And the kitten, Brother Danny, latched into her hand, hair standing straight up. And the mama cat came and scratched her on the leg. What I'm saying is, even a house cat can inflict injury. Can you imagine a lion? And yet, no harm. Somebody had suggested that a heretic suggested, well, King fed them lions good before he put him in there. That ain't what the Bible says. Why did he not hurt them? Because he was full? No, because the lions, the angels shut the lions mouth. So we know exactly what happened. God intervened. All right. Then we have the destruction of Daniel's accuser. Note verse 24 with me. Not only were his accusers cast into the den of lions, his wife and their children. And that's sad, isn't it? So those men who came and brought this accusation against Daniel, it cost them their lives. It cost. Now I'm going to tell you one of the things they did. They fooled the king. They deceived the king. And the king was not real happy with them. And not only were they cast in line with their families as well. And I will say this, that seems cruel. And it is cruel to me. I'm this side, not back in the Bible days. But one of the things the king was setting, a precedent he was setting, you mess with the king, you're going to pay double. It not only, some people would die, but they wouldn't expose their children. And we've got a situation, and I'm going to mention this and leave it alone, okay? We've got a situation going on with Israel and Hamas and killing back and forth. And one of the things some of the terrorists seem to do, they seem to put their military bases or strongholds in schools and all, Brother Bo. And America, generally, we won't bomb them because of that, and that's what they do. Israel, if you got a base there, what are they going to do? They're going to bomb that base. That's well known. So one of the things, children, they try not to be there. Number two, Hamas learned to people like that you can't do that. I still have a problem with children getting killed, don't y'all?
Yeah.
But I try to understand some of that, Miss Jean. If I was over at Israel and I'm fighting for my life, why they may do things different than the way we do things. They certainly did in the Bible days, didn't they? It's not uncommon in the Bible, Brother Bo, that that's what they would do. When they destroyed the enemy, what did they do when they went into some of those cities? Everybody, men, women, and children. They did exactly what Israel seemed to be doing now. They took out their enemies. And so when you see it, and I tend to be a little judgmental, I try to remember and put that in the light of some of the things I know in the Bible, and I still struggle with some of the things going on. Destruction of the accuser. By the way, they were devoured before they ever came to the bottom of the deal. Before they hit the bottom, their bones were broken. So, were these lions ferocious? Very ferocious. And these accusers were killed. But the interesting thing is the last of the chapter. Declaration of King Darius. First thing he made a decree. Look at verse 25. The Bible said, and then King Darius wrote unto all the people, nations, languages, dwelling there, peace be to you. I make a decree, an official decree now, that in every dominion of my kingdom men tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. Here's the decree. It's kind of funny. He said, I want the people of my kingdom, all the languages, all the territories I've conquered, every nation, to be God-fearing folk. That's what he said. Fear the God of Daniel. And so he gives this, he makes a decree. Now he made a decree concerning remember the lion's den, petitions, remember? This is just as much a decree. And if anybody said anything bad about Daniel's God, I think they could have been dealt with severely too. Doesn't say, but the fact that this decree makes it a formal law. Okay, so he makes a decree. But I like his declaration. He said, "Let me tell you about it." He declared that Daniel's God is the living God, steadfast forever. Then he goes to declare his kingdom. Oh, he had talk about praising God. This man did and had an understanding. Kingdom shall not be destroyed. His dominion even unto the end. He delivereth and he rescueth. He worketh signs in heaven and on earth. He has delivered Daniel from the den lions. I noticed when I went back to another chapter, and I'm trying to think of the king. Well, it was King Nebuchadnezzar. One of the writers who I love a couple of books. One Oliver Green, one of them is Warren Wiersbe. One of the writers said because of what Nebuchadnezzar said, he felt like he got sacked, and he had a declaration very similar to this. But he wrote in one chapter, it was actually that he wrote, it came from, it starts off about chapter number 4, and he wrote, said, peace be unto you. Who does that sound like writing? Apostle Paul wrote. And the commenter commented, well, that's just a confirmation to me. I expect to see King Nebuchadnezzar got saved in heaven. And I have no problem with that. It seemed like that. What he said. Well, you find the same thing, find the same thing here. This is what he said in verse 25. He said, the king Darius wrote to all the nations, languages dwell in the earth, peace be multiplied unto you. Now, this is me, and I'm reading between the lines, John. Just look. I do not, well, how do I say it? I don't necessarily believe, well, as the chapter began, that King Darius was a Christian man. He used Christian, a believer. That what the Old Testament say. I don't believe he was a believer in God. But I really think that he did get converted. But I think what converted him was Daniel's steadfastness. If you believe in God enough to die for him, he must be the real God. All right? And the king couldn't sleep. I think that night, I think he did what Daniel did. I think the man prayed. God, I don't really know you, but Daniel loves you. Help him, Lord. I think Daniel, though it did not convert the accusers, I think it did lead to the conversion of this king. By the way, later this king's going to make a decree. Now that's Brother Melton. It's not. You see why I'm saying what I say, but I don't know for sure. You see, I mean, but it's sure. That's a pretty good declaration for a lost man, you know. And peace be unto. And by the way, these kings didn't necessarily. They were pretty ferocious. For a king of that nature, or whether it be Nebuchadnezzar or this king, to say peace be to you, and you be one of his captive nations, that sounds like it coming out of a saved heart. I agree with the writer on the first one, and he didn't say it on this one, but I believe so. So here we see the declaration of Daniel, King Darius, and he gives, I mean, similar to what the Nebuchadnezzar gave. Look at that ending in praise. Hey, what did it really say? Unto God be praised. What a great God. And some of the things he says about him, kingdom not be destroyed. He's a living God and steadfast. I think he came to know the God that Daniel knew. And he gives this declaration. And then we see, and I don't think I have another slide on this, but I want you to notice the last verse. So Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. All of his time now, for 90 years, God had looked after Daniel. And throughout the Bible, we find God looking after people. If we will honor God, God honors us. You say, well, Brother Melvin, things are really kind of bad. We got war going on in Israel. We got Russia mad, and we've been supplying arms, and, you know, well, what are we going to do if war breaks out? What are we going to do if tomorrow morning, during the night, we heard a siren going off? We've been attacked. Which is a possibility. Do y'all agree with that? More so, Miss Connie, I think more so. We went through the Cold War, but I think the situation today may be worse than the Cold War. I mean, I think there's less stability, and that makes it bad. We said, what are we going to do? Is your God able to deliver you? Mine is. And if he calls me home, Miss Sheila, I don't think heaven's going to be all that bad. Our God is able to deliver us. So don't worry about our situation. Use your time wisely. Serve the Lord faithfully. Daniel had a real difficult choice. What would you do if there was a law saying you could no longer preach the gospel or attend church? Well, we shut this thing down right. But there ain't anything right here. Would he? Preach it. Many of you would be right here too.
Yep.
Brother Dan, to close this, I had a youth event, and I was trying to teach a youth something. I was trying to teach them course of the Bible. Sitting here like we're doing, and I'm sitting here with the youth, and of course it was planned, I knew to share it well. But all of a sudden, deputies come in the door, with blue lights flashing outside. And they come in, they said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm preaching to the young people. They said, they said, look, you can't do that, that's against the law. We're going to have to take you in. The deputies were real serious acting, though. You know how deputies can be off from the bed. And they said, and not only that, we're going to come, young people, you no longer can have a Bible. 12, 13, 14, 15, age group, 16. So they took up the Bibles. Of course, I'm there with the young people. I said, young people, just go ahead and give me your Bible, it'll be all right. You know, I'm confident in the young people. And they said, we're not going to take you in tonight, we are going to have you come in when I left. They put a sign on the door, closed by order of the state. Now, my whole idea was when I got over there in the youth, we got a youth building, well, they took our Bible, but they really didn't. I said, and I'd say, Adrian, I want you to write everything down about Ezekiel you know. She said, Preacher, I don't know anything about Ezekiel. I said, oh no. Does anybody? We lost that book. It's got to be in your heart. Having a Bible is not much good if we don't know much about it. Because Brother Daniel explained, Brother Danny explained pretty much the passage of Ezekiel, which is kind of hard the other day. So I know a little bit more about Ezekiel than I did this evening. But what a challenge we have. We're living in the days of Daniel. May face, but we got the same God. Isn't that good? Well done. Father, thank you for the time together. Bless us now in the time of fellowship. Then in our Sunday service, bless the Lord, as we learn about adoption and Lord, foster care, Father. Lord, we know that's